Peter Neil Carroll is currently poetry moderator of portside.org. His sixth collection of poetry, recently published, is entitled Something is Bound to Break, and it's being published by Main Street Rag. Earlier titles include Fracking Dakota, Elegy for Lovers, and A Child Turns Back to Wave, which won the prize Americana. Peter lives in Belmont, California, with photographer-writer Jeanette Ferrari. And quarantine does make it difficult to sell books, but he will offer free shipping if you contact him through his email address, and Clay will put this in the chat, peterncarroll@gmail.com. Without further ado, please welcome Peter Neil Carroll.
Thank you. I've read in live appearances a couple of times in your wonderful series, and there's always a wonderful crowd and there's so much enthusiasm. I'm always leery about this silent stuff because you get no feedback, and I hope that doesn't diminish the feeling today. But let me start by reading a poem that will get us started, right? It's called The CEO Speaks. When a customs officer at Newark pulled me aside to ask what I do, I told him I'm a poet. You write jingles, he replied. Luckily, I live with a sensible woman who has a real job at a Silicon Valley company producing high-tech, heat-shrinkable plastics. She brings me to my first corporate Christmas party, not quite bald men clutching drinks and blonde-eyed secretaries sniffing champagne. Already the big shots are working out whom to bed when the party runs dry, before they retreat to their wives raising virtual children. Unsure of my welcome, I keep to the edges, mind my business, which is to say take mental notes or a poem I will write someday on male privilege. Until one of the suits notices me standing alone, approaches with a handshake. Quickly, I explain my ticket of admission, and he scans the room to find the woman I live with. She's from Brooklyn, he tells me, as if I didn't know, which is his own hometown, and goes on to relate his rags to riches spiel. He is affable. I take a chance and ask what he does. He smiles, he winks, enjoying the question, concedes he's the CEO of this Fortune 500 business. What about you, he gets around to asking, amused as if he knows the answer. A poet, I admit. His eyes narrow and he's measuring me very carefully. That's what's great about America, he says, invoking his wisdom. You can be anything you want. An opera singer, an artist, a poet, as long as you don't expect to get paid for it. So, this is sort of coming from my new book, Something is Bound to Break, which is about heritage and identity and legacies and social justice and how it shapes a person and what maybe we have in common. And I hope just by picking out a series of these poems, you get a sense of who I am and where I'm coming from and how I'm desperately trying to touch you too. So this poem's called Finance. Maybe because my father fixed pocket watches and antique clocks, I never carry a timepiece. The one watch I cherish belonged to my mother's father, a gold stem winder attached to a chain that he held close to my face, springing open the lid against my nose and making me laugh. That watch has ancestral history, not for its age or rarity, but how my grandpa used it for so much more than telling time. A glazier in New York who earned $5 a week for 6 days of labor He had no means to pay the fare to bring his wife, my grandma, from Minsk. Obviously, he could not afford a gold watch, but he bought this one on the installment plan for 50 cents down and quickly pawned the watch for $50 to cover grandma's passage. Afterwards, he kept up the payments and managed to redeem the pawn, whereupon grandma announced she wanted to return to Minsk unless he brought her parents to America, prompting him to refinance his watch. But for that delicate object, the only thing of value he ever owned besides his tools, he would have been another lonely immigrant in a lonely city, and I would be nothing at all. So I grew up in New York, as you could tell from my accent, and went to public schools and came from a working family and so forth. I mention this because it's Labor Day, and we'll come back to that in a minute, maybe. This is called A Crooked River. French class in high school, not exactly what every kid in America needs to succeed in life. And Mr. Tall, a short man, playing the role of mentor, asks why the same river is crooked. Artie Epstein, who wouldn't know the left bank from a savings and loan, calls out, "Who gives a shit?" A remark Mr. Tall decides to ignore. Artie's father, salesman of liquid vitamins, stashes the merchandise in his basement, where Artie goes to pour 2 bottles down the drain and refill them with his father's scotch. These we carry in our shirt pockets in case we get thirsty. The medicinal label and odor ideal camouflage. For chemistry class, Artie steals the final exam from the teacher's desk, copies answers in code, and we both score A's. Mind you, we're considered normal students compared to the uncontrollables who carry switchblades and muscle little kids for their lunch money. Prudent teachers avoid the hoods, but treat Artie and me as safe targets, giving us detention, low marks, and bad reports on our very permanent record. We retaliate with the weapons we have: cheating and lethargy. That outburst about a stupid river in France. And this is one of my early jobs in life. Again, in honor of Labor Day today, and in honor of a young person, a young man discovering what work really means in America. It's called 90-Day Wonder. First day hauling mail, my pouch packed with letters, magazines, household bills. I follow Larry, my mentor, to a playground where he teaches me how to kill hours, watching mothers who wear halters and gold lame slacks. He explains that women are attracted to our uniforms, which I confirm whenever I knock and a lady calls, "Wait a sec," peeks over the chain, then opening shows her whatever and adds, "Oh good, it's the mailman." I'm 19, this summer job a windfall for cash, building muscles, enraging patrons by mangling their letters, and once a high school diploma, the girl's mother wailing, "She might as well not graduate as get this crap in the mail." Veteran carriers laugh as they mix up my address list or hide heavy parcels in the bag I carry all day, while the bosses forget to punch time cards, screwing my pay. A 90-day wonder, I hold one unbeatable ace. I'm on my way to college, and my pals Larry and Duffy, Keegan, Rogers, guys with wives and kids and in-laws, are stuck with sore feet, leather bags, and a lousy pension. Wherever they think I'm going, they're not. It's that simple. And my only very distant brief touch with anybody of any consequence was a high school kid I went to who was a trumpet player and showed up in the Blues Brothers many years later, Alan Rubin. This is called Brass. The obituary of a high school classmate, a name I don't quite recall, lures me to the yearbook, where a photograph verifies my failure of memory. What I do remember: isolation, boredom, nausea so bitter I can't persuade myself to attend reunions. But as one obit leads to another, Sheila eulogizing Rochelle, my oldest friend, I find the obituary of the trumpet player who shared my music and menthol cigarettes, who joined me at Birdland to dig Dizzy and Miles. Hard to believe. Made of brass we were, a pair of show-offs, his career sizzled as mine soured. I see it's over. He got what we both wanted, what we played for. No need for envy or brag between us. Too late to wonder what I might have become. I take out my horn one more time, shocked by how awful I sound. I asked an old man once if the death of a friend made him feel worse or better. He frowned, deep in thought, chortled. Well, he said, here I am. Eventually, I came to California, actually about 40 some odd years ago, and quickly fell in with a bad crowd, who I describe in this poem and the next one, and maybe will become a little familiar as we go along. This poem is called Anonymous. The old communist behind the bar is decanting rot gut red into green bottles, pours me a taste. He'd fought in Spain with the Lincoln Brigade and in the big war that followed. He has stories. Oral history, we call it. I want his past. He hopes I'll give him a future. He pours, I drink. We begin. Depression days, hunger on the streets. He complains to a priest who titles him a communist. He's calling. He won't speak of battles, says little about a silver star at Anzio or liberating a Nazi camp. He blesses his luck. Once he aimed his rifle at an American officer shooting German POWs, but he had no qualms about killing the SS. No poetry lost, he says. And later I find $10 bills saved in the pages of his favorite poets, Blake and Yeats. When we walk through the zoo admiring caged monkeys, he talks about a Nuremberg tribunal or Richard Nixon. At the ballpark, he refuses to stand for the flag. Cheer up, he chirps. The worst is yet to come. While sleuthed by the FBI, he persuades an agent to give him free rides. He can live without a car. At his job in a mayonnaise factory, he declines promotions so immigrant workers get better pay. One night he warns me his comrades are dying fast. He says, I'll be seeing you soon, as a ghost. We scatter his ashes, as he wished, with the fish outside the Golden Gate, where no one could find him. So I got involved through this guy named Jack Lucid with the Abraham Lincoln Brigade in the Bay Area. And in fact, there's a little commercial. I'll tell you that on September 12th, Saturday, coming up at 2 p.m., there's going to be an online ceremony rededicating the monument in San Francisco to the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, who were the volunteers, the American volunteers, who fought in the Spanish Civil War. When they first did this thing, Mayor Gavin Newsom was there and a lot of big shots, and we're hoping some of them will return. Isabel Allende is also going to be reading them. In honor of this ceremony, I offer you another poem about Abe and Jack Milt Mo Dave. They were not my family. They distrusted strangers. I could only approach them slowly, these Americans who had volunteered to fight fascists in the Spanish Civil War. They lost, bad guys won. They bore failure like primal sin, while first love that comes and goes never leaves. In their homes, they kept fetishes, Guernica prints, Spanish brandy. Their loyalties were born of danger and death. They invited me not eagerly, but lacking choice if they wished to outlive themselves. Each craved to be last of the Lincoln Brigade. I became expert at funerals and obituaries. Deathbeds I avoided, but sometimes compassion exceeded common sense. I cared for them, for Abe and Jack, Milt, Mo, Dave, Eddie, Marion, the three Bills. I missed them. They were history. They were legend. Their example led me to enter intimately into life's calamities, to seek a role, a small role, or merely the hope of a role, to speak against injustice. Not victory, but promise amplified their cause, living with purpose. Without their voices now, it takes arrogance for me to claim a historic role, though silence means insignificance, defeat. So working through the Abraham Lincoln Brigade archives, which I've done for many years, I ran into a group called Open Arms that operates in Spain to rescue people on boats fleeing from the wars in the Middle East, being in situations of terror and all that. And meeting these people led me to writing this poem called Sanctuary. The village creek serpentines to open seas, where I stand all day at the ocean shore, feeling the planet tremble. Salem Melville got it right, picturing landlubbers lined at water's edge, looking outward on holidays, chary of wet feet. I'm of the coastal breed, fear-fed by tsunamis, yellow signs reminding, never turn your back on the waves. But when a war overflows the skin of safety, even a leaky ship looks dry, launches a last hope, desperation, uncommon courage. Later, the crew of lifeguards reports orange tubes floating like macaroni, hearing the human plea for sanctuary, bodies in the water. How few they could reach. Old men, children, the drenched Syrian mother who tumbled naked overboard, cried out, slipped away. Flotsam whirls under sea or aerates into mist. A woman's gasp, spirit ghost, lifelines passing fast. And on the theme of people, refugees, and groups like that, I have another poem called Comrades. The old Chinese man, his smile ripe, he's eating a large Fuji apple, or maybe it's the morning sunlight that swells his cheeks. Most days I pass him on a bench in a vacant playground, staring at idle swings. After I say good morning, never before, he raises his left arm and gives me a quick salute. His happy teeth part, but no sound comes from his throat. Perhaps crossing borders, he's learned both charm and caution. He keeps full eye contact, indicating he has more to say, as I have more I'd like to say. But I've learned nothing about how to welcome someone who knows no English. When I return later, he's surrounded by cronies from the old country, women and men watching children. His hand flies up to greet me, palm open, as if to say, "Stop here, my friend." Lacking for words, I've become the outsider. Mute as he. I raise my hand and continue on alone. Okay, just three more. This one is a lighter one. It's called Broken Blossom. I think you'll catch on, anybody who knows anything about North Beach. Wandering past the sex shops in North Beach, I slip into Cafe Trieste, where a few bucks gets you a bitter espresso, a side of salami. Then head over to the Beat Museum, reliquary of testosterone poets and Dharma bums. Nearby sleeps the Condor Club, 60s mausoleum, where a skinny, giggling kid named Carol Doda unbuttoned her white blouse, 34B bra, sang sad songs to a herd of 4 martini ad writers glued to their seats. A broken blossom, sighs the weary Chronicle reporter. She went on to bigger things, mostly a pair of silicone implants, blonde wigs, and voice lessons that didn't help off-key tunes, as if that matters when a topless 48 FFF descends from the ceiling astride a white piano, singing, "Hello, Dolly," wiggles for 20 minutes, and ascends like the mythic poets, leaving with her musical behind. Once an overexcited couple screwing on her piano flipped the up button until it hit the roof. The man on top asphyxiated, the woman obliged to wait beneath him until the morning shift pried her loose. It was tragic, says Carol, tearing up. How does she feel about men hitting on her? She blushes and then admits, "I like it." The scarlet light bulb nipples no longer sparkle like rubies on the outdoor marquee. The bar stays dark in daytime. And here I stand again on the threshold of adult mystery and promise, wondering where the fun has gone and what I would say if a woman stepped out and invited me in. So I taught a course at Stanford for many years called Film and History. And eventually I got around to writing what I now call my last lecture. Film and History, my last lecture approaches. There's no reason to call it the last, except for my age and apprehension. I could repeat it next year, surely I can, but should I? Why this ambivalence? Much has changed. Movies, audience, my students. I've learned the logic of rear view mirrors. 50 years stretches the gap between then and now, between them and me. Some have seen their last screening. One or two constants remain: chickens and eggs. Why did they appear in almost every American movie? Scrambled eggs for breakfast, fried chicken for lunch, walking on eggshells, chicken shit ideas, eggheads. No one believes me, but there they are. Written by screenwriters, items on Hollywood menus, symbols of dare. Paul Newman's Bet You Can't Eat 50 Eggs, or James Dean the rebel yelling, "Don't call me a chicken." Now I urge this last class to remember young Beneatha and raise it in the sun. She demands a world of choice, wants to be a doctor, but her brother Sidney Poitier tells her to become a nurse or get married or shut up. In movies, women know things men know nothing of. Plots about manhood wind up being about mothers, sisters, wives. Men go to war, come home with PTSD. bewildered by emotions they lack and women provide. Pay attention, I plead. I won't be here to remind you. The movies are real life. We are all beneathers, or Bogarts, or Brando, mumbling, I could have become a contender. Even if the end seems fated, they refuse to stop, as do I. Movies claim the last word, the last kiss, the last laugh. Actors who are stand-ins for the rest of us speak again, arise, and insist it's not too late to start over. Is it ever? Let the credits roll, lights dim. I see my screen is fading. And now I just want to end with a very contemporary film, poem, if you don't mind. Yeah, just rough a little bit, it's fresh, speaks, to something I'm testing. It's called Emancipation. You can see the money running away. Retail fleeing to the new hillside mall. The spacious furniture store vanishes while a resale thrift shop comes in. And the fortress-style bank takes off, leaving its ATM to the Salvation Army. Downtown has lost its courage, except for night ladies, tattoos, a thriving drug trade. At the corner of the square, where white marble city hall and county courthouse preside over closed commercial streets, the homeless sleep and violence waits. Plate glass windows on vacant shops now feature old high school yearbook photos, failures and dropouts who disappeared or died of opiates during the last recession. And when the coronavirus comes to town, say monthly government reports, the poor go first, listing jobless adults of color who live crowded, lacking care. The rich go last. No surprise. And no politician, no candidate dares offer the magic bullet to save society. Take away the assets of the top 1%, free those enslaved, as Lincoln did in 1863. Thank you all for listening.
Woo! Thank you so much, Peter.
Hey. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. It was a beautiful reading, really balanced all over the place, lots of different, lots of variation.
Yeah, lots of variation and lots of
A lot to think on, too.
thinking, deep thoughts there. I really enjoyed it.
Your characters really come into the room. I really felt like the people you were writing about were here. So thank you.